This week, the Supreme Court issued a ruling that overturned 50-year-old Roe versus Wade. That original ruling handed down in 1973 determined that governments lack the power to prohibit abortions and that a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy was protected by the Constitution. This week, the majority opinion to overturn Roe issued by the court stated, and I quote, "The permissibility of abortion and the limitations upon it are to be resolved like the most important questions in our democracy, by citizens trying to persuade one another and then voting." In the 50 years of the pro-life and the pro-choice conflict, there has been a lot of quote-unquote persuading, and none of it has produced clarity or unity. And in fact, the impact of decisions that have been made willingly or forcibly to terminate pregnancies has continued to cause not just conflict within our society, but I can share with you from firsthand experience from people that are near and dear to my life, with whom I share intimate relationship with, the trauma of these decisions have a much far-reaching, greater influence. Statistics will tell us that if we were a normal sorting, that there would be 1 of 4 women in this room who would have been impacted by having taken that decision personally. And so with great sensitivity and honor to those kind of things, I would like for us to discuss, I'd like to present to you maybe a way to think about this. Because even in response to the ruling, one side was quick to proclaim its victory, and just as quickly, even today, there are protests that are going on where the other side is resolved to indemnity. And listen, personally, I support the court's decision. But I do want to tell you that ultimately, my perspective on the court's decision can't be based in just my personal opinion, and it can't be based in just a political position. As followers of Christ and as people of God's kingdom, the thing that must shape our perspective is the unfailing truth of God's word and the personal responsibility that He has entrusted to me and to you. And I want to take us back to one of the first covenantal choices that God presented to people when they are faced with life-changing decisions. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 19 to 20 says this: "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witness against you, that I've set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Now choose life. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God and listen to His voice and hold fast to Him." Get this: "For the Lord is your life." For the Lord is your life. Those of us in this room understand that choices have consequences. And no amount of legislation, no amount of court ruling removes the responsibility that every individual understands that we live within the consequences of the choices that we make. And God, the giver and sustainer of life, implores us, begs us to choose life. Not only the life of the unborn, but also the life of the individuals, men and especially women, whose lives are impacted by the unanticipated ramifications of the exercises of one's own personal rights over their own body. think it is important for us as a people of God to understand that to choose life is to choose love. In verse 16, it says that to love God is to keep his commandments. The directives that God gives us are life-producing and life-releasing. But we're also told in verse 17, if we don't live this way, the way of love, we will be drawn away. Look at what it says here. But if your heart turns away, and you are not obedient, and if you are drawn away to bow down to other gods and to worship them, listen to me, if your heart turns away, if you are not obedient, if you are drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. Would you agree that there's something in our human nature that we are often drawn away? We are enamored with our own opinions and logic. And I feel like we begin as humans, especially as Americans, to whom there's a portion of our Constitution that is called the Bill of Rights, that we begin to worship our personal rights, which inevitably leads us to destruction, a result of having cursed ourselves in defiance. Let me remind you, the decision that was made by the Supreme Court of the United States does not settle the issue of the unborn. It actually puts it back to us. States will take up the cause. Individuals will exercise their voice at the voting booth. But I want to tell you, I think there's something even more important than that, than exercising that privilege. It is my prayer that we always preserve the sanctity of life, both for the unborn, even more so for the born, for the protection of all children and the evil that threatens to steal and destroy their lives. Yesterday, you know what else happened? The final child was put to rest. It was killed in Uvalde, Texas, from a month ago. That we would be people who value all life just as Jesus did. And this is not about asserting our privilege for the Second Amendment or the 14th Amendment. It is about being people who understand that God values life of all kinds, and so must we. That we would be people who would be used to bring hope, that would be found by people who are in deep despair because we as the people of God are moved by compassion for others, the hurting, the oppressed, the unseen, the lost. There's a choice that lays before us as the people of God. You can choose blessing or you can choose cursing. In my opinion, abortion is not the only altar to which our children have been sacrificed. It's just one of many. And the challenge isn't with the loss of life of those children, because they are embraced in their eternal. The challenge has to do with us as we navigate relationally with all those who continue to experience their brokenness. Whether it is as they weep in their car, the trauma that they may have endured through their life, or the breakdown of a family that allows a teenage boy to buy an assault rifle and walk into a school. It's not just picketing Planned Parenthood. I have a friend who, because she experienced the same kind of challenge in her young adult life, even though she made the decision to go ahead and have the child, heard of another teenage mom that was facing those same kind of challenges, and she felt her only option was termination, until this friend of ours gathered a whole group of moms around there. And for the first 5 years of the child's life, bought groceries, diapers, formula, and free babysitting. What kind of commitment are we going to be? When Jesus saw the crowds, it says that he was what? Moved with compassion. No one is ever moved by policy. Do we need to take a stand? Yes. Write this down for me, please. There is no such thing of conviction without compassion. There is no such thing as conviction without compassion. And may we, the people of God, may we always, always choose life. Because every life matters to God.